Animal Health Wales is the embryonic beginnings of the BVD eradication programme for Wales. So we don't have any numbers to talk about. It's just the plans as far as we're going to go over the next few years or so. And it's run and staffed by myself and John Griffiths, who's over there in the back table there. And we are the entirety of the staff. So it's a very flat management structure at the moment. Essentially, I say, what do we want to do? And he says, I can't afford it. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. But we are the output of the Wales Animal Health and Welfare Framework Group. So they decided that they needed, BVD was one of their priority diseases to deal with a number of years ago. And that framework group is made up of farming unions, levy bodies, BVA, and a few bunch of others. So it's driven by the industry, but organised by government. So it's a government body that's populated by industry itself. And they, that group, with me and John and Hazel Wright, who's also in the room, we put together a paper to submit to Welsh Government about longer than 24 months ago now, saying this is what that group wanted to do in terms of BVD eradication. And we based it on surveillance of herds through blood sampling at the annual TB test, eradication on those farms that turned out to be positive, and that would be the responsibility of the farmer and the private veterinary surgeon. And then we'd move in from a voluntary phase through to a legislative phase once we'd covered a good bout of work from there. And that would be, legislation would be based around making sure PIs could not move off the farm of origin from there, as much as everybody else has done this morning as well. But that takes money. Yeah, as we've all said, that you have to be funded. And in terms of where the Welsh source or the Welsh scheme, RDP funding was identified as the most likely place to get sufficient amount of money to actually create a deliverable scheme. And within Wales, at least, we had the option of doing animal health testing at that point for the first time. So we thought we'd best grab it and take it and try and get there. So we submitted the industry paper and we got very positive feedback from the government, from the RDP scheme, and they said submit it. And the stages that we had to go through, and I'm doing this because it's a very long process to try and explain why we are so far behind. But we had an expression of interest and we put that in and we've got that approved about 18 months ago. And that was just a concept note to say that we'll take this forward and have a look at it. Then there was a second stage, a development phase, so you apply for funding to sit down with the industry and take that industry paper and turn it into something that's deliverable within the RDP framework and structure. Okay, and so we've been approved for the development phase for about 12 months, and we've put us a full level application for a delivery phase, something that can be delivered on the ground in February this year. And we aspire to announce that we've got the money at the Royal Welsh, but we are very much on Welsh Government timetables. And I've been here before, and they said, we'll get you the grant letter by X date, and 6 months later, we're still waiting. But that's the aspiration for this year. And if that comes off, we'd be hoping to start ground level activities, farm level activities, around about the beginning of September. Don't quote me on that, wait and see. There. Governments are not notoriously responsive. So what have we actually applied for? What's coming down the stream if we are successful? What we're going to do is blood sample all the animals at the Young Stock Management Group at the TB test. We'll get that result back to the farmers at the end of that TB reading session. If you are negative, this concentrates on the BVD infected farms, or those ones that come back with a positive result. All of that information, the information will be fed back through the private veterinary surgeon, whether you're negative or positive. If you're negative, then you'll be guided to give biosecurity advice, how to maintain that status, protect yourself as much as possible. But critically, if there's evidence of infection, then there's a whole package of other things to go around there. And we'll do financial support to help farmers eradicate BVD on those farms of up to £500 to find the PI animals from there. And that will be guided very much by the private veterinary surgeon, that we won't be mandating a specific method to do it. Our belief here is that the best person to advise on how to deal with BVD on your farm is your private veterinary surgeon that knows it as much as possible. We will have guidance notes and things to support that, to help people along and to allow help the communication, but the private veterinary surgeon remains at the heart of this whole project from there. If the farmers engage in year one, so in September or for whenever we start, they will get that young stock sampling for up to 3 years. So we'll build up a big picture of their BVD status. But if they join in year 3, they'll get 1 year of it from there. And that allows us to get a good picture of the status of the herds, the national herd. Around about that, we're also putting in, and these are mostly budget lines, so what they are and what we'd like, we're listening all today and putting ideas and aspirations into it, so what we believe, but we'll have a database in there. We'll have postal solutions to ensure that we can move those samples around the country and to the various labs as efficiently and as quickly as possible. Like I say, we'll have guidance notes for the farmers and the vets, so just to help that conversation along, to give the vets and the farmers some ready references to make sure that they cover off all the important parts and nothing is missed at that point. Face-to-face CPD, mostly based around the process for the vets so that they know what's going to happen, how we're going to do it, what the forms are going to be filled in, but some other stuff as well. That will be mostly done in the earliest parts of stages, and we'll hopefully move it on to online vet training as funding comes through and time gets through. And similarly from farmer training as well, so that they know what's going on and they're aware what's going to happen on their farms. But just to repeat, the veterinary involvement in this particular program is absolutely central to what we want to deliver. We won't be able to deliver it without the private veterinary surgeons on the farm. They'll give us the surveillance, they'll take the young stock bleeds, they'll deliver the eradication from there, and critically, they'll deliver the advice to farmers around biosecurity, around risk-based trading, all that good stuff, and up to and including vaccination if they need it from the farm from there. That's the aim. But to take us away from BVD for one slide, what we've got here and what we hope to get here is an embryonic system that will allow us to develop to eradicate and control other diseases within whales. That's the intent. This is the one that we start with, and then we start hooking on, taking advantage of that vet to be on farm with the annual TB test and their knowledge and expertise to control other diseases more economically, more efficiently through this delivery mechanism. I say we hope that we're going to start this year. We are waiting on funding. We've done all the funding hoops that we've been given. Now we wait and see what comes in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. I phrased my introduction very badly. What I should have said is that he has a very widespread veterinary career, travelled extensively, living and working in Australia, Africa, the Middle and the Far East, as well as most parts of the UK. So he's a farm vet of great experience, and obviously the Welsh scheme will be in great hands if he ever gets the money. So questions, please, for Neil.
Neil, do private veterinarians have to undergo a training program before they're allowed to advise on the scheme? Because the vets could give different advice, and that could be quite complicating.
So at the moment, in terms of planning, we've got planned a face-to-face CBD training scheme to make sure that they understand the system that's going to be in place. So how you're going to put the postal samples, what samples you've got to take, how they're going to come through. So that basic structure. And then later on, we'd be following that up with CPD training in terms of how you eradicate later on. So yes, the simple answer is yes, they will have to be accredited to be taking the samples and sending them on. We did a small trial earlier on to make sure that the systems more or less broadly work. So we sent 24 sample packs out to farms and see how quickly they could get in. That worked very well, but what didn't work was the vets that I didn't tell directly that got confused about how the system worked. So we need to just make sure that people actually taking the samples get taught by somebody on the scheme rather than saying it to the practice partner and then waiting for him to pass on the instructions. That doesn't work. So we need to have that direct face-to-face training to make sure the system works as slickly as possible.
Any other questions?
Hello there. I realise you're holding out for the government funding, and I hope you're successful with that, obviously. But on the logo behind you for BVD Free England, it's probably just about enough space to fit and Wales as well.
Well, that might blow my budget, that's the only thing.
Any other questions? Yeah, still.
Yeah, your scheme, because you're following TB testing, seems to be based on an individual farm basis. How does that actually tie in with the eradication of the disease from Wales? Where's you need the database to join everything together, and I can't see you've got that joining up at the moment.
So we need to acquire a database. That's the fun thing. We don't have a database, so that needs to be created, and we need to work on getting the links so that we know what farms, we have a reference to what farms and what animals are actually in Wales. So there's a lot of work to do in that direction, that we know just exactly that, where are the farms and what the status, and we can link them up. Say at the moment it's a budget line, and once we get the budget, we can then go to the various bodies and say, right, let's get this done so we can actually model what Scotland's got and get that similar sort of system in place.
For the herds where you identify positive animals or seropositive animals, do you intend this to be an awareness campaign for the farmers, or will there be support there in terms of follow-on testing with tag and test or whole herd bleeds?
So if those young stock bleeds come back with positive animals, there's £500 to do testing of any type. So that can be tag and test, and that can be bulk milk screen, depending on what the private veterinary surgeon says. Now that might do all of the farm, or it might do a portion of the farm, depending on the size. But that support is there, so that they go in with seropositive herds, go in, try and find any potential PIs, animals. We don't have any mechanism in place to remove them. We just say they're where they are and give strong advice that they should leave. But one of the iterations in the recent years as part of the funding stream is that if you don't remove that PI animal, then we will put a block on and say we won't bother doing surveillance year 2 and year 3. If you're on there, you need to do the full work to get years 1, 2, and 3 testing in there. But there is the money to go and get rid of the PIs on those farms. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Neil, for a good talk. Thank you. Okay. We have a few minutes before lunch, so if anyone has any questions that they weren't able to ask earlier on, feel free to ask them now.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for arriving late. We had a kamikaze lorry driver who decided to drive into a railway bridge, which put 2 hours delay on my journey. So apologies for not being here. So some of this may have been said already, but it was relating to the Manx presentation. And it's nice to be an island, I think, a smaller island. It has some benefits, although we know other islands further north have had some issues with that. And the question I was going to ask about the biosecurity question that was been asked, and I think one of the things that I've struggled with, so I started in my practice in 1995, BVD eradication on a farm basis, which might be a bit crazy in Devon, but it seems to be working reasonably well, before PCR and before tissue tagging, but obviously we've integrated those into the system now. And what made me think of it is yesterday I had a client who is BVD free, and his bull decided to put its feet upside down and died. So he now goes out and needs a bull in a hurry, but he's not actually going to isolate that bull. It's going to go straight in with the cows because the bull decided it would die in the week running up to when he wanted to start serving. So my question, I guess, to the Manx system is that's a real worry to me, is it's the TI. I saw one, again, in foot and mouth where AI stopped, as we know. Bull was tested as much as could be for all the various diseases, but literally walked off the lorry into the herd and started serving cows. They were BVD negative, and their antibody bulk, this was before we had PCR, just went off the end of the scale. So I think we mustn't underestimate, particularly at the end of schemes, where we've got, predominantly free herds or herds that are free, this risk of actually animals just walking onto a farm, carrying BVD virus up their nose, wherever it be on the nostrils, and then disseminating it. So I didn't know whether that scheme, that process was in the biosecurity. There was no mention of isolation of animals coming onto the farms in Isle of Man.
Yeah. Thank you. You make some good points. I have to say again,
it's going on. Go on.
Yes, I'm really not a great fan of moving bulls around the countryside, but it's a fact of life. We do encourage people to work with their vets to do semen testing on bulls, to do basically veterinary examinations and testing of bulls before they bring them on farm. But these are the only recommendations we can make. We're not in a position to enforce it. It should be part of their on-farm herd health plan, but sometimes things happen and the best ideas go astray. Bulls are obviously problematic for lots of disease issues, not just BVD. It is a concern, certainly, as we get towards hopefully the end of the occurrence of BVD, that these otherwise marginal sources will become more important. And we do push good old-fashioned biosecurity. We've had one very unfortunate incident where a farmer's friend decided to help him move some cattle around, and he ended up with BVD, which he'd never had before. And while we can't absolutely prove it, all the circumstantial evidence points towards the fact that he was just very unlucky that this trailer was contaminated with bovine viral diarrhea, and he got onto his farm. And it's people doing favours and people doing things in a rush. And biosecurity is not a part-time job, but this is, really changing the way people think.